is the problem I have. I have a custom-made small luthier, super cool guitar that literally found me this week. I have a friend that I went to high school with, and she called me and said, hey, a friend of my mom's has this old guitar. So I haven't even seen it yet. It got dropped off at my house, but I want you to see it, and I want you to see what happens when I find a guitar that I do not know how to price, I do not know how to value. Here's what they want. They want me to tell them, what is it? What is it worth? Does it need any repair? So let's figure that out really quick. I'm Jeremy. I'm the guitar hunter. This is a badass guitar. Let's check it out. So here it is. It's a really good, really tight grain spruce top. I can tell that this feels like a lacquer finish, but there's little things you can tell that, you know, it's a local guy that made it. So look at these gaps on either side of the saddle, so it doesn't quite fit right. So it has some cool features. Got some initials inlaid here on the fingerboard. Truss rod up here, so it's not necessarily a Martin style. And then the W for the Wagner. Cool rosette. Ooh. Guys, that looks like cherry back and sides. Those are some funky Grovers. I've never seen them like that. Oh, I didn't see that. So it's got this cool volute here. So in here, there's a cherry pick guard, but it's not sticking. You can feel that it's lifting up. I can hear the tape. It's really dusty under here. The action, oh boy. I think the action's probably going to be too low. It feels very low. So let's go ahead and get this thing up to pitch and hear how it sounds. So it looks like a pretty brown piece of rosewood here, but this neck is very dark. Very dark ebony. SJ Fluke. So that matches here. Look. SJF. Another detail I just noticed on this guitar that is interesting is look how shallow, how short this neck joint is. But it's so well joined. Oh boy, this thing is. It's in tune, but it sounds like it's like a step or two low. So right now we got problems. This guitar won't even really play the way it is right now. Let's restring it, let's get it tidy. Let's see if we can fix that buzz on this high E. I'm assuming that the truss rod, oh yeah. So, one thing she did tell me is that this guitar has been stored in a house that has wood heat. So they burn wood in the winters when it's cold. So that means very, very, very dry air in the winter. So this thing right now, I can see the truss rod is a big hump. So I need to take tension off of the truss rod. So first, I'm just going to take the strings off, clean the fretboard, and get ready. Has ebony pins. Oh, these have not been out in a long time. So typically I push the string back down into that hole, and that'll loosen up this, loosens the string, and then if you wiggle the pegs, they'll usually come out. Look how different that color is. We're just going to let this thing just soak up some oil. You can tell this is 80s because they're brass. I don't know why everybody loved brass in the 80s. Now we hope it's a Gibson size. Haha, it is. Oh boy. That's worrying. I went to take the tension off of the truss rod. I turned it. It turned 1/8 of a turn and then was totally loose. So this in here was just totally loose, and that psychs me out. So that means that this isn't a double action truss rod. So this guitar is going to need some meaty strings to pull that neck back forward. So it's the next morning, so I restrung this guitar, I looked over it, and there are a couple questions you have to ask when you're looking at a small builder. There are thousands, and there have been thousands more of guitar builders across the US. Lots of them built guitars in their garages, in their basements, in a wood shop, and they never made it to the full term of luthier. You know, they made a couple guitars here and there, they did their best, but in the end they had a full-time job doing something else, they had a family. So this guitar is not boutique, but it is a small builder. And so that's an interesting and important difference that you keep in mind. There are several really specific questions you need to ask if you're trying to figure out how much is an old small builder guitar worth. So the first question is, how is it made? What are the materials that are make it? What are the techniques that are used to put it together? This guitar seems to be really well made in certain regards. The finish is exceptional. The joinery, how the neck is joined to the body, looks like a dovetail joint to me. The truss rod, it's a very Gibson style truss rod, and the headstock is small. The tuners are the wrong choice. So the tuners are too big, and the keys, you can pinch your fingers as you're trying to tune them because it's just the wrong size tuners. They are Grovers, but I've never seen Grovers quite like them. And the big thing with them is that they are actually, the gearing is different. They tune really quickly, and so it makes them really hard to be accurate. So you'll be tightening and all of a sudden you go over. The next thing is the material of the nut and the saddle. I don't know what it is. It's not bone. It looks like this very porous, very textured material. I don't know what it is. It seems like it's catching the strings a lot going over the nut. And some of that can be fixed by using a lead pencil or using graphite to lubricate that. The other one is the saddle it doesn't fit. So the slot for the saddle is wider than the actual saddle is. So there's about 1/8 of an inch on either side. So on the materials and how it's made, this guitar is really interesting in the fact that it has really, really tight spruce on the top. You don't see that normally. It feels more like the Italian or the European spruce tops because it's so tight. It has really dark ebony on the bridge or on the fingerboard, but it has really chocolatey brown rosewood for the bridge. The headstock overlay is rosewood. But on the back and sides, it is cherry. And I'm sure that it's local cherry to here. I'm a sucker for cherry guitars. But with this guitar, it feels very boomy. Cherry can sound like maple sometimes because they're both similar kind of tough hardwoods. But it feels very boomy. And then it has what looks like, it could be koa binding. I'm not sure totally what it is. Koa would make sense for the very 80s kind of aesthetic. in the end, when you start looking at the construction and the materials and how it's made, this guitar has some things that are really good for it, but other things that are clearly kind of a home-brewed version of a guitar. The next question is, who knows about the guitars? Have you heard of them? Has anyone in your community heard of them? So this is a Wagner. I have asked around, and I've been in the guitar community in the Shenandoah Valley for a long time. I haven't heard of anyone that remembers them too well. Every now and then you'll hear somebody say, oh, there was that guy out in Grottoes who was making guitars in the 80s. But you know, it's 2019, so we've now lost, there's a lot of time between when this guitar was made and where we are now. So I'm going to continue asking around. But if you're trying to figure out the value of a guitar, it depends on how many people know about it. When I was in South Louisiana, I had an opportunity to buy a Manuel and Patterson. They're really, really great guitars. They're made by these guys in Folsom, Louisiana. Actually, they live in Covington, but they make guitars in Folsom. And they're a really great guitar. But what I found is, if you got more than about 30 miles away from where they were made, people didn't know what they were. And so that made it a little tricky for me to buy and sell. So with this one, a Wagner, no one really knows what it is. Third point is that it really comes down to how much risk you're willing to take on the price of this guitar, and it also comes into how much you're going to pay for it. So with this guitar, I'm not going to buy it. This isn't what I'm being asked, but the customer is trying to figure out how much to charge for it, how much it's worth. So for me, if I were to buy this guitar, as cool as it is, I think that it is probably $1,000 to $1,200 guitar. I'm probably being harsh on it, but to me there are a couple things. Like, it is going to need a fret level and some neck work. My rule for what I would pay on guitars is typically I want to be able to walk away with about 30%. 30% makes it to where it's a modest amount of money. There are some guys that aim for 50. 50's a lot, but so for me, I wouldn't buy this guitar for much more than $500 or so, $600, just because I'm going to have to put some money into it. But it has SJF on the fingerboard, and it makes it a little tougher for somebody to buy. But I think it's time to hear this guitar, to check it out, and to tell me what you think about it. I let it sit overnight because the truss rod had a positive bow, and when I took tension off the truss rod, it showed me that it more than likely does not have a dual action truss rod, because I started to take tension off, the tension came off, and then the nut spun freely. It wasn't moving backwards. So most guitars now have a dual action truss rod, which as you turn them backwards, they're actually going to start encouraging that neck to release. This one didn't have it, it just had the wood. So I put medium strings on it, I let it sit overnight, and I think that's the best thing I can do just in a 12-hour period to get this guitar to sound better, play better. So let's listen to it. Very tight. It feels like it has not been played in a long time, and maybe it just never broke into being a guitar, but it feels like every time I pull a string or I play it, it just tightens up real quick and it doesn't sustain. I also you can tell, that neck's still super flat. If I really dig in, it's just gonna bottom out, it's just gonna buzz. So I'm trying to be soft on it. Very buzzy. No matter what I'm playing, it seems to buzz. This guitar is really cool. I would call it well made, but I would say that this is a homebrew. And so that's where you really need to understand the difference between, you have large manufacturers, you have Martins, you have Gibsons, you have Fender, you have these giant, huge international corporations that are building guitars. Then, beneath that, you have kind of provincial type buyers. So that's where I would put Collings into that now, because they're just making so many guitars. I put Breedlove in there, where they have kind of this overseas component. But then you start dialing back, then you get into the Olsons of the world, which are just boutique, amazing. They just want to make the best guitars that are possible in the world. And then you have the next step down, which are kind of these lone gun building guitars in their basements or in their garages or wood shops. And those guys are just trying to make the best guitars that they can. And that is an important difference. So like, Husson Dalton is making the best guitars in the world. This guy is making the best guitar that he can. You need to hold them in a realistic view. You need to understand that they're cool guitars. They have some cool quirks. The upside, there's an amazing upside to these, which is that I guarantee you there is not another guitar in the world like this. Oh, look, that's funny. There's no strap button on the back. That's funny and awesome. This guitar was literally made to sit down. There's no strap button on the neck either. Do you guys see guitars like this out there in the world? Do you see small builders? Do you see these lone gun kind of guys? If you do, how do you price them? How do you know what they're worth? How do you sell them later on? These are all really good, important questions. I'm glad this guitar found me. This is just a friend that said, hey, I've got this weird guitar. Can you check it out and tell me what it's worth? But thanks for watching this video. I'm Jeremy. I'm the Guitar Hunter. Let's go fill the world with music and friendship. One of the ways that you can do that is that you can buy a t-shirt, and that supports this channel. Also, there are going to be some affiliate links in the bottom in the description here, and those are just links that they help me a little bit, but they also are just the strings I like, the camera I like for making these videos, the tools that you would need if you want to be a guitar hunter, just a basic toolkit that you should carry with you. So thanks for checking it out. I'm glad that we're in this together.